the CFP semifinal after the loss to Miami.
Right.
I think we were both in agreement that that was probably not going to be the last college football game that Trinidad Chambliss had played in his career.
Absolutely.
And while some people might think the best step for him is to go to the NFL, he is still projected as a day 3 draft pick, believe it or not, even though he's the number 3 quarterback off the board, according to Mel Kiper Jr. Of ESPN. I think it just goes to show how weak this year's quarterback class actually is.
Yeah.
And him returning next year basically gives him the opportunity to show scouts, hey, you know, this wasn't just a 1-year run, so to speak.
Right.
That I'm actually here and I can compete against Division I athletes for a longer stretch than just a year. Because, I mean, you can go on these runs and you play these teams once, except for the Georgia team. And I think that game really showed scouts a lot that, hey, you know, you can't really scout against me even if you've played against me, because I'll still find a way to beat you. And the 2 best games of his career, in my opinion, were the 2 games against Georgia. And it just seemed like they just ran out of gas in the first game. So I think that this was something that we all saw coming. And I think the fact that you file the lawsuit in the Mississippi court, in the Oxford court, right? I believe it's 1 mile away from the campus, and the judge that's got this case is a Ole Miss law grad. So take with that what you will.
Right.
I'm sure there's all these like prediction.
A judge is supposed to be fair arbiter of the law.
Fair, yeah.
But
we just saw yesterday, you know, the Tuscaloosa judge was like, yeah, you know, Charles Bediako, he's good, he's good. So I'm sure there's going to be absolutely no bias going on here at all. Just like the same way if this were to be filed in an Indianapolis court.
Yes,
totally no bias there at all. So
no.
I mean, it's just it's a crazy situation that we've seen unfold, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this was the last one.
This is interesting because I follow. I don't know if you follow Tony Robbins, the motivational speaker and all of that. He has one thing. He's got one phrase that I really like, and it's called "Success Leaves Clues."
Yep.
He basically talks about how the keys and pillars to success kind of runs across the board: business success, sports success. I think success is leaving clues here as well, because we are seeing the same game plan being rolled out with all of these situations. If the NCAA denies it, you file an injunction within a local court, and next thing you know, you're able to come back and play. Now, Charles Bediako, the guy at Alabama that was the headliner yesterday, we don't know yet if he will play. But however, the path has been open. Same thing now with Trinidad Chambliss. It looks like the path is now opening that he will be able to win this injunction, mainly because if you don't speak a lot of legalese, I'll try to break it down to you as best as I know. The fact that the way that the cases are in these books, this case will not be even seen until like 2028.
No.
So as long as you can just kick the can down the road one time.
They have a stack of papers this high that they have to get to first.
That's exactly right. And way more.
We'll get to it later.
Way more pressing situations. And guess what happens between now and by the time they get there? Another college football season and another basketball season in Bediako's case. And so I think what we're seeing with the NCAA is they're almost like paper tigers. Yeah. Like they're shaped like a tiger, and it looks like there's going to bite, but there's not much they can actually do in these kind of situations, especially once it goes to court. So I think that we're in a situation now with both Bediako and with Trinidad Chambliss that they can go in and help their teams, and they're just doing it through the court system rather than asking the NCAA. And this has been something that's gone on for a while now, and so we'll see if it ends up working out for Trinidad Chambliss in that same way. But as you mentioned, it's in a court there in Mississippi, and I'm pretty sure that's exactly the reason why people feel like, hey, it is emerging that he will be able to play coming up next year.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been saying from the beginning that I think that even if the appeal doesn't go the way that you wanted it to.
Right.
And I knew from the jump that the NCAA wasn't going to allow this to happen, because why would they let something good happen?
Correct.
You know, it just seeing how things have unfolded in the past, you know, I call the NFL the no fun league. I don't know what I would call the NCAA. I can't really say no fun league there because it doesn't really make sense. But I will say
the West Virginia brass last year during March Madness, they came up with an acronym.
I'm not sure if we're allowed to say that on today's show.
I'll leave that to the governor.
Yeah, leave that to you if you're so inclined to know what my people up there in West Virginia.
They didn't hide it either.
Wanted to think about the NCAA. You can just go ahead and look that up on Google.
Yeah.
Like Kurt Signetti says, Google me. Which, by the way, did you see that they added?
No.
So if you Google Kurt Signetti now, it says, "Yup, he won." At the top. Do it right now. Do it right now.
I'm do it right now.
Do it right now.
Really?
Yes. I'm gonna do it again as well. So if you look up Kurt Signetti,
that is awesome. Shout out to Google for that, by the way. That is great. At the very top.
Yep, he won.
Yep, he won.
I mean,
and right there at the very top. You know what? That is. If I'm Kirk Signetti, I try to go get some NIL money from Google. I know they're all Silicon Valley people up there from all these tech companies. But I wonder if you could go to Google and say, hey, look, I know I didn't do much for your bottom line, but, people are using Google and not other search engines because of what I said.
Well, at least he's cashing in somewhere else because I think he's got a deal with Chipotle now.
Oh, that's right. He had like 500 bowls and a beer deal as well, I think.
Did you? Yes, yeah. He gets lifetime beer from the distillery that makes Hoosier beer. I apologize. I do not know the name off the top of my head. But I will say you can now order the bowl that he gets every day at Chipotle.
It's called a Signetti Bowl?
Yeah.
That is awesome.
They should name it the I Win Bowl.
Right, yeah.
But speaking of the whole Bediako Chambliss situation, which we'll dive into with our friend there, Scott Griffin, up in Birmingham in just a few minutes. Our friends over there at AL.com did report that the plan is, as long as things go according to plan over the next 2 days, that Charles Bediako will play. Which is absolutely ridiculous.
It's ridiculous to think considering the fact that he hasn't played college basketball since 2023. But this situation to me is really intriguing for a lot of reasons because Trinidad Chambliss, his impact on the football field will obviously be huge for Ole Miss next year. This is a team that was the highest finishing SEC team in the nation last year. They finished number 3, and to get your starting quarterback back and the guys that made the run to the college football championship is huge. For the immediate future for Alabama, what they need right now what Bediako brings.
Yes.
A big body, down low, and being able to get rebounds. And that's exactly where Alabama is hampered. So I think the immediate impact for this Alabama basketball team could be a monster thing for coaching company. It is interesting because we heard preseason some championship coaches. You had Tom Izzo, you had John Calipari have spoken out about guys that are being able to get this extra year, so to speak, in the NCAA allowing it. Now we will say in the NCAA's to their credit, I'm using that in air quotes, the big ones, they have said no to the Bediako deal. The way he's able to play is through an injunction in court. Mm-hmm. However, Kentucky head coach Mark Pope after the game was obviously asked about it as well, and he has some interesting thoughts.
I'll give you my 2 cents just so you have it. At some point, I don't have hard feelings towards anybody making any decision because every single college program and college coach are the most competitive people in the world. They're going to try and find any avenue they can to find an advantage. It's what we're paid to do. It's what we do. The one stopgap that is kind of spreading right now that maybe has some legs, it's kind of a last stand, is the NCAA does get to decide who gets to go to the NCAA tournament. Like, they get to decide that. They have that power. And so at some point when they've been very, very clear about what the rules that they're going to try and enforce, they might lose in court, but they still get to decide what games count towards the NCAA tournament. And I'm not saying that to penalize any team. I'm just saying that because at some point it is important that we take a stand and regain some tiny ounce of sanity. And until someone tells me different, I still believe the NCAA has full power over who gets in the NCAA tournament and what games they count towards your NCAA tournament bid. And at the end of the day, that is what drives all of us. So hopefully we'll take a stand there and clean this up for everybody, because right now everybody is chasing their tails, and I think it's a place we can take a stand. I hope we will. This game matters too much. The NCAA tournament is too extraordinary a deal. These high school players and these young players and all these players matter too much. College basketball matters too much.
Mark Pope's thoughts are really interesting, and they're interesting considering what he has on his own squad, because he does have a guy that was cleared by the NCAA that did play professional basketball in Europe. And so that's kind of the dividing line. He did not outright say, to his credit, he did not outright say that Charles Bediako and these other guys that have played in G League games that are getting on the court because of the injunctions, he did not say that they should be, dismembered or whatever.
Right.
What he did say is essentially AHSA, or sorry, not AHSA, I'm thinking of our local governing body.
Yeah.
What he's saying is the NCAA, hey, guys, you know what to do here, essentially, is kind of what I got from them. Like, hey, if they decide to play Charles Bediako, you know what to do with him. And it seems like it's a pretty slippery slope, though, because when you're talking professional basketball, it looks like has to be a differentiation between American basketball and European. And it looks like Mark Pope is kind of urging the NCAA to go that route.
And we're starting to get more reports of the NCAA starting to gain momentum on if Bediako were to play in this game this Saturday against Tennessee, that the chance of that win, so to speak, if the Tide were to win, would probably be vacated.
Yeah.
So,
right.
I don't know why you would run that risk.
And that's the thing.
That's just
to me. One game probably doesn't cost Alabama the tournament.
Yeah.
It could cost Alabama maybe the difference between a 3 seed and a 4 seed. Especially if Tennessee goes on to have a good year. If that's one of their quality Q1 wins, that could be a huge one for Alabama. So I don't know if these 40 minutes without a guy that hasn't played for the first 20-something games of the season, I don't know how big of a difference it makes going into this game. I am interested to see going into this season if there are a lot of coaches who just say, you know what, we will beg for forgiveness on the back end and just go ahead and just go through with it. Yeah. And I wonder if Nate Oates is that guy, because like you said, it seems like there is a push for Bama to play him. And it seems like there might be a push from the other side for the NCAA to say any game that he's in, he's not eligible. And it just looks like these two forces are coming to a head. And if the ultimate arbiter is in court, well, then the NCAA is going to lose because they've lost all of these. Why? Because the case just gets stuffed down to the bottom. We'll see in 2028 when none of this matters.
I mean, you might as well just call the NCAA the 2007 Detroit Lions when they went 0-16, or the Cleveland Browns when they went 0-16. I mean, they just don't win. And until there's help from Congress with an antitrust act, I just don't see them ever winning a case.
Right.
Because when there's money on the table, it's always going to go in the favor of the players, because you've opened these floodgates when you started the whole NIL thing.
Correct.
And there just wasn't enough guidelines. There just weren't enough guidelines when it started. And now we've started to see it snowball into what it's become now.
Right. And the thing is, if you go to Congress right now, not sure if you follow the news, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. A ton of stuff. And I'm talking about
if you thought the stack of papers was this high for the NCAA, it's like this high for
Congress.
Yes. My hand's going out the frame.
I mean, there is banking stuff. There is federal regulations. There is possibly a new Fed chair. We have relations as it relates to foreign, the European Union, Greenland, everything else. The Senate's card is full. I don't know if they have time to be fixing the NCAA's problems.
They aren't going to answer. They'll be like out of the automated responses that you get when you start emailing people. Yeah. Sorry, we'll get to this at some point. Yeah. And it'll be 2030. And, is this still a problem? Do you need help here? Maybe they should just start banning teams from conferences.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. Just come up with something.
The most they'll have is a committee who sits around, and by the time the committee's done, nothing is done, and Bediako's already led Alabama to the Final Four. That's kind of what it's going to be. Stay with us here next on Southeast Sports Plus. We head over to Alabama. We will talk a little bit more about this situation and about other things in the SEC, as another big slate of college basketball is just around the corner. Stay with us. Back here on Southeast Sports Plus, there's a lot to digest as far as games go, but then even off the field and off the court, we have a lot of information there as well. It seems to be that right now Tuscaloosa, Alabama is kind of the epicenter of all of this. I know Trinidad Chambliss and what's going on in Oxford has been a big deal. Earlier in the year it was Baylor and a few other programs, but right now it's in Alabama with Charles Bediako, and that's where we find our very own, one of our favorite guys, and
yes.
Scott Griffin. And Scott, you've covered sports for a really long time, so I'm really interested in your thoughts on this, because you've seen what the AHSA, the NCAA, I keep saying AHSAA, I keep getting these governing bodies because the AHSAA, as you well know, is coming out with
They're in trouble with other things.
I know, and there's a big thing that we will both cover with that governing body coming up later on this week. But for the NCAA and for what's going on there at Alabama, I want your big picture thoughts when the first lawsuit came out, and then when the court case made it, or the court made its decision, and what it means for Alabama and head coach Nate Oates.
All right, so this thing, look, I'm no expert, right? But as far as I can whittle it down, the controversy as far as Charles Bediako is concerned is the other handful of cases where there's guys playing. None of them signed quote-unquote NBA contracts.
Correct.
Now, none of them played in the NBA,
right.
But Bediako, as you guys know, signed a two-way contract, which is partial NBA, partial G League. He signed that with the San Antonio Spurs when he came out. So that's the thing everybody has an issue with. He's the first one of the 4 or 5 or however many there are now that signed an actual NBA contract, even when he hasn't played in the NBA. That's the deal. So they cleared him anyway, a Tuscaloosa judge, go figure that, right? And then it's a 10-day restraining order. It's the other part everybody's talking about. So he can play Saturday, but we don't know beyond that 10-day window. Yeah. So he's got to go back to court with his representation and figure that out. So that's the big hubbub across the country. This guy signed an NBA contract and is allowed to do it, even though he hasn't played in the NBA. From my understanding, that's how I get it whittled down, because we could spend 2 hours on it, right? Talking about everything.
So the NCAA has basically been in favor of amateurism since its inception, basically. What even is the definition anymore? Because now these guys have contracts, and we're starting to see some guys overseas that have signed professional contracts. Keep in mind, professional contracts overseas now coming back and playing for the NCAA. I mean, where do you draw the line on this?
Well, Patrick, that's a great point, and I actually thought of that this morning. The other thing I thought of, besides he signed the NBA contract and the other guys hadn't, the guy at Baylor and all the other guys. This is really, if you think about it, to me, an NIL problem. Because let me ask both of you guys. If both of you guys could come back to college basketball and you had already started playing professionally, right? Put yourself in his shoes. If NIL did existed, you just going to come back to help old Griff and the college team for free?
I'm getting my money.
Probably not.
No.
Probably not.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think it's connected to NIL. Now, what I can't figure out is certainly Alabama has already spent their budget, right?
Correct.
I mean, we're in the middle of the year.
Right.
This isn't summertime. So where did they get extra cash to pay him whatever? And obviously it's greater than what he would have gotten at the G League.
That's right.
Because this guy a week ago was playing in a G League game here in Birmingham, and a week later he's going to be playing for Alabama in a college game. It's just unbelievable. So NIL is part of the problem here. It's just not getting the headlines because of this NBA contract and guys being eligible. At least that's what I think about it, because he's not coming back to, again, play for the good old Crimson Tide and go after his degree.
That's
not why he's
that statement.
That's why I found it was hilarious, and you've read enough of these public statements to kind of know the wording behind them. The Alabama public statement was laughable on its surface because it was like, hey, he's coming, we're support his efforts to come and get his degree, and nonsense. He's had plenty.
First of all, you can get your degree while you're playing G League.
That's right. There's been plenty.
Serious about it.
There's been plenty of guys, yeah, for sure. There've been plenty, especially if you're playing a G League schedule, you're not playing as many games as the NBA, you're not traveling as much. You would think you'd actually have more
bus
time
rides. You could be studying
to go get your degree. But then the NCAA statement also too, it kind of rang true because what it did was it was surrounding itself in the wording of he signed three, and the wording was he signed 3 NBA contracts. They didn't say it pro, they didn't make it ambiguous. He signed 3 NBA contracts and then evoked the high school part of this. Like, hey, this is taking a role. The NCAA's role is to basically, I'm paraphrasing, to procure these things for high school athletes. And so they're now trying to take the sentimental standpoint of, hey, we don't believe this on its surface because he's taking a role from high school. I just think the NCAA has now dug itself too far into this ditch where now what the guys do is they find the side door, and the side door is the courts, and the court system, they will just, because like we've said, a Tuscaloosa judge in this case, an Oxford judge in the Trinidad Chambliss case, they're always going to side for the guys that are sitting right next to campus. So this kind of, to me, seems almost untenable when the college athlete literally just runs to the courtroom.
Yeah, those guys are appointed, right, or voted in. So,
right.
I mean, they're not going, they're living in the city where they're making these now very popular decisions.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer. The NCAA doesn't have any power, it seems. They can say things, but to your point, if all I got to do is go, open up a case in the hometown of the team I want to play for, and it could be, a restraining order could be granted, then that's all you got to do. So, and again, the precedent was already set with the other 3, even though, again, Bediako was the first to sign NBA contracts. It was already set. He's the 4th or 5th guy that's going to be joining a team in mid-year.
Correct.
So they've got to be clever in passing other things, like maybe you can't add to your roster after January 1st.
Right.
Maybe that's the answer, or whatever. Because really in college, how would you do it anyway? Right. Even if you had 5 injuries, you can't go. You're not going to go get a kid that walked on just to have bodies fill the court.
Somewhere right
so there's
an
answer somewhere, but I don't think they're asleep at the wheel or something.
Right.
I'm not sure what it is. But again, if federal, you can do anyway.
Yeah.
So it's a maddening. There's so many. I'm not telling things you guys don't know. There's so many tributaries and things to this. It's truly remarkably thought-provoking. I mean, it's crazy. I don't even know how to. And to your point, Patrick, I don't know what it is.
Right.
It's professional. Let's be honest.
Exactly.
It is.
Yeah.
They're getting paid right now.
Right.
So you can call it amateur, and I'm sure at the level of Sanford or I don't know, give me a school down there. Spring Hill,
yes.
Is it still down there? That's pure.
South, yeah, for sure. Even South Alabama for a lot of in a lot of sports, it's pure.
That's pure.
Mm-hmm.
But once we get to this level,
it's the minor leagues.
Right, and you're not
exactly
calling you're not calling it that. Whether he does play or does not play, Alabama's in a really interesting situation with this basketball team. And I want to get your analysis now that we've had a few SEC games under their belt. It looks like rebounding has been their issue, which ironically is something where Charles Bediako can help out.
Defensive rebounding. Wow. And this guy happens to do that.
That's exactly right.
Mind blown.
That's exactly right.
I mean,
but your assessment of this team, sans Bediako so far early on, and just the way that this guard play has really taken over with LeBaron Philon and Aiden Holloway. Your thoughts in the early stages of SEC play?
So, Gerhard, what you're saying is they could have got Javon Quinterly.
Yes.
But they found this big guy that happened to do what they need. Isn't that wild? How did that work out? Craziness.
One funny thing that you'll find hilarious because you edit video, you're in the content space. When I was looking for Charles Bediako video and I was downloading a bunch of Charles Bediako video, how many Javon Quinterly alley-oops I found.
Right.
And then the hero shot literally goes back to Quinterly, and I needed to go back on Bediako. And so I have to edit Quinterly out of here, but you're dead on. The fact that it's a guy that can seemingly help him out right now.
I heard Mark Sears is now going to file a lawsuit as well.
Exactly. Why not? I mean, I don't think he's played the NBA, so it seems like that's the only thing you got to not do. I think obviously it helps the team, but again, as you guys know, he was never a 25 or 30 minute guy.
Right.
He's a 15-minute to 20-minute maybe, and right now he's in shape. Again, he was playing in the G League.
Right.
And he's a post player and a defender. To your point, he's setting screens and defending the post. And it's not like Alabama's running a bunch of different stuff offensively than they did when he was there 3 years ago. So he can fit right in with what he does. And we might be getting all torn up for a guy that's going to play 10, 12, 15 minutes.
Right.
So, all that we'll find out, I guess, Saturday. But, yes, he fits. He's exactly what they need because Aiden Sherrill is a perimeter 7-footer who can show flashes inside, but he doesn't even, hang around inside all the time. Whereas Bediako is a true, pure post player that's going to allow Alabama to extend their defense, getting passing lanes, which creates offense for them. Mm-hmm. Because if they make a mistake or a guy gets behind him, suddenly there's a 7-footer there that can send it into the third row. So that's a huge change. It's beyond who he guards.
Right.
It affects the whole way you might want to attack defensively. And Alabama's been pretty porous defensively many times this season. So it's going to be interesting to see how he plugs in.
One guy that is not going to be playing 15 minutes, he's going to be playing more than that, is LeBaron Philon. And I think I asked you this question way earlier in the season after like the fourth game. But now that we're past the midway point, do you see him as a potential lottery pick in next year's NBA draft at this point?
Normally guys like that are not, but he is really playing himself certainly into that conversation. Mm-hmm. Here's why I think. I think because he's 6'3", I think he can play point in the NBA, but he can also play an off guard as well. Mm-hmm. He's improved his outside shooting. I don't know, you may have it, Patrick, what he's shooting behind the three. But to me, just watching
Not that
he's
great,
improved that. Yeah, he's improved his mid-range game. His defense, when he plays defense, he can, when he's interested. So, sure. I mean, a guy that's still young, because this is only his second college season, and the NBA loves young guys. There you go, 22 points a game. Grab a few boards, some assists. I mean, look at his field goal, 49%. That tells me his three-point percentage is probably 37-38, right?
Yeah,
I don't know what it is, but
I think he had that one stretch where he went like 2 for 18. That's kind of dragging it down.
So he's, 50% is pretty good. So I think he's definitely in the conversation of lottery pick. I don't think he'll make it because when we talk about these things, as you guys know, we forget about all the European guys, right? That they're loved with.
Right.
So there's going to be a handful of those, and there's only a certain amount of lottery picks. But I do think he's probably definite top 20, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Nate Oates spoke a little bit earlier this week. They didn't have the off week, so he spoke after the last game about the free throw shooting early on and some of the things that he is seeing.
To me, you got to get locked into winning the game. Like when you're skilled, you're talented, and you're locked into making winning plays, you go to the line, you make free throws. Like you spend enough time in the gym that you're not overthinking it. I mean, the free throw is the one thing in the game of basketball that there's zero variance to, other than the variance you put in your own mind. And if you put enough time in the gym and turn yourself into dang near a machine that you're doing the same thing every time at the line, you just step up and you make them. So we got to get our guys in the gym. We got a week off. They got to get in the gym. They got to spend more time. They got to earn the right to make the free throws by putting the time in. They got to earn the right by being about the right stuff. We obviously weren't about the right stuff to start this game, and I think that translated to us not making free throws when we needed to because we weren't making them in the first half when we weren't locked into playing both sides of the ball. So, yeah, we got to get better at a lot of things, and that's right up at the top.
So Alabama got that win there on the road at Oklahoma. The upcoming stretch is pretty interesting because Alabama played a very tough non-conference schedule, and now they're reaching kind of what I feel is the meat of their SEC schedule. After that Tennessee game, they'll host Missouri, and then on the road at Florida, who's absolutely red hot right now. Then it's Buckyball at home as Bucky McMillan comes back, and then it's an Auburn team that's sort of finding its footing right now. We'll see where they are on February 7th. What do you make here of this little stretch for the Crimson Tide looking to be a part of the upper echelon of the SEC?
Well, it's difficult. Tennessee's difficult. They're going to defend you. They ramp it up anyway on the road. Obviously, they'll be on the road. So they're difficult. They'll make it physical, and that's why Bediako, that's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Missouri's always tough. To your point, Florida is Florida. Bucky McMillan is now 15-4 for A&M. So let's put all those questions about him being a high school coach. Can we just stop that right now? Because he was pretty good at Samford.
Oh, yeah.
He's in his first year, and they're 5-1 tied for the league, right?
Exactly.
So, and Auburn is obviously, it's Alabama-Auburn. So regardless of what it is, it's always going to be difficult. And they're playing better defensively right now. I think they've won a couple in a row, too, on the road. So it is a key stretch. And really, you could argue every game is, because there's no great team in the SEC. You guys know this. It's hard to get a feel on who the best team is. I guess you would say Florida's playing that way now, A&M. But, you know, Tennessee's 2-3, and they're really good.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're going to be very dangerous coming into Tuscaloosa. So you got 9 or 10 teams thrown in this pile that anybody can go on a run and beat anybody home or away. So Alabama's got to find a way to, I mean, they need to probably go 4-1 in that deal because they've already got 2 losses. If they go 3-2, 2-3, they may be looking at playing the first day of the SEC tournament. Maybe.
Right. This is a really interesting time in football for football players because the season is now already over. Looking ahead to all of the pre-draft work, whether it's the Senior Bowl down here in Mobile, you also have the NFL Combine, and then teams get ready for their pro days, and you'll obviously have a firsthand look at a lot of top players for Alabama. I want to stick specifically to the quarterback and Ty Simpson because this is a guy that I think if you ask a lot of people, there was some rumors that maybe there'll be enough NIL money to entice him to come back to school. He decides to go in the draft. Currently projected as the number 2 quarterback by expert Mel Kiper Jr. What do you want to see from Ty Simpson between now and draft day to show that he is one of those guys, and how do you see him faring out in the league? I know the last time we saw him, he was injured at the Rose Bowl, so it's kind of hard to make a hard and steadfast determination, but where do you see yourself? Where do you see him here in late July or late January?
Well, I'll tell you this, because there's another thing I've been thinking about the last 24 hours, because I've been reading the things you guys have been reading where people are questioning him, saying, well, he had a bad finish to the year. And Patrick's the numbers guy. I still think he had, 24 to 26 touchdowns and 5 interceptions.
Correct,
so
yeah.
He didn't finish too badly. And I have an answer to that. Guess what it is? Because you guys heard it all year. They didn't run the freaking ball.
That's 100%. What I've been saying.
So when you're a quarterback, you gotta he's not so good. You can't run the ball around him. So I think his bad play was in great part that they didn't run the ball. And if you remember, they beat 4 to 5 top 25 teams in a row,
right?
With no off week in the middle of the year when he was playing fantastic. And what were they doing? They were running the ball in those games. If you go back, you'll look, there'll be over 100 yards rushing in those games. Yeah. So I don't, and Kiper brought that up. I dismissed that because I think he can make every throw. He's a physical specimen, but he's big enough. He's got some feet that he can get out of trouble and do some things. He's a coach's son. He thinks the game. He goes through progressions. I'm not saying he's perfect. Don't get me wrong. But some of the things they're talking about, Gerhard, is not correct. And I think the big thing is he didn't get help from a bad offensive line and a team that didn't run the ball, putting him in bad situations. And to your point, he was hurt. I think pros look at that and go, man, that dude played hurt.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
He's a tough dude.
Right.
So the 2 things that they say are negatives to me are positive.
Positive, exactly.
That he played that well and had his team in games when he had no running game and he played injured.
That's exactly right. And I love that reframe on that. And I think it adds valuable insight to somebody who might just be doing the lazy thing, like you said, and just looking at a bunch of arbitrary numbers and then saying that he wasn't a good quarterback down the stretch. No, that was excellent insight. Excellent insight. Scott, thank you so much. We'll be talking again, I'm sure, down the road as we get closer to the draft and as this college basketball season plays out. Thank you for your time here on Southeast Sports Plus.
All right, guys. I'll see you later.
Absolutely. See you. That is Scott Griffin joining us from Birmingham, Alabama, and he's right there kind of in the epicenter of what I think will be probably the most watched game in the SEC this week.
Yeah, and I think even eyes outside of the SEC are going to be paying attention. I think just people that enjoy college basketball and college sports in general are going to be paying attention, because if he gets in the game, I think I said this yesterday, I don't know if he's going to be met with cheers or met with boos, because like why are we allowing this to happen? Like,
correct.
This just isn't college sports.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see how it all plays out coming up this weekend. Coming up next, we stay on the theme of the NFL draft, and as we get closer, a lot of the college guys in and around the SEC now looking to play at the next level. We have that and more next. Welcome back to Southeast Sports Plus. Several members of the SEC and all the top players in college football will start the NFL draft process. The draft does start in Mobile at the Senior Bowl with practices. There are expected to be more than 28, I believe, general managers that are down here, coaches that are down here in this way. And I know this will be your first one here as a Mobilian, but this is always a really interesting time, because guys that play at small schools can elevate their draft stock. Guys that play at big schools can kind of go head to head and really make a lot of money in the pre-draft process.
Yeah, and I think some of these guys that are also not only coming from the smaller schools, but also maybe undersized in some areas, can have their chance at going up against some of the quote-unquote elite talent that will be here next week, and show off their skill set to these general managers, coaches, as well as some of these other scouts. So I think it's a great time for all of these players. Like, one of the guys that we'll talk about here is D'Angelo Pons.
Yep.
He's 5'9". He's a cornerback. But, I mean, I've seen him lock down some of the best wide receivers in the game.
Right.
But some people say that he's undersized at 5'9". What is he going to do going up against, like, a 6'5" wide receiver? Like, you don't know. So
Right.
I think that's why he's one of those guys that could benefit from playing in the Senior Bowl next week.
100%. And because he will be playing against, I know he played in the Big Ten, and people will say he played in the Marquee Conference, but you can make an argument getting down here and getting with other guys that might be first-round guys, second-round guys, and guys that are the upper echelon of college football will get him to that next level. I think he can be impressive enough to possibly land as a first-rounder. I think some teams might, draft him a little bit lower, but because, like you said, there's not that crazy big quarterback class, other positions could find themselves making that move up, though. Also, out of the SEC, you have Malik Muhammad that has accepted his invitation last week. This could be a Texas Longhorn. We saw with the defense towards the end of the year could make himself a lot of money coming up next week.
Yeah, and he's going to join his fellow Longhorn defensive member, and Michael Taft, the former walk-on, who I think Michael Taft honestly could be a first-round pick in Pittsburgh here in just a few months. But Malik Muhammad, I think we talked about the game that he had against OU in the Red River rivalry. I believe he had both of his interceptions came in that game. He was the SEC Defensive Player Player of the Week after that. 2 of the 3 John Mateer interceptions came from that game. I think Malik Muhammad, I'm going to make a little bit of a projection here for him. I think he plays himself up here next week.
Right.
I could see him staying in the Lone Star State, just going up the road to Dallas there, playing Arlington. You know, the Cowboys could use a couple.
They need help.
Yeah, they definitely need help because the secondary burnt toast. That's the only way I can put it. The only way I can put it.
And it's been bad for a little while now. I mean, you've had the defense overall has been bad, but then you also you lose Diggs, you lose Michael Parsons in a trade, so he could be a big asset to Jerry Jones and that defense. It's always really interesting when the SEC guys come down, whether it's Florida, LSU, Ole Miss, proximity to Mobile, but also Auburn and Alabama. When those guys end up coming down as well, they're not only a crowd favorite, but also guys that help fill up the seats there with tickets goes. As tickets go, but Jam Miller is a guy that could, I think, can make himself some money here this week as well.
Yeah, and we just talked with Scott Griffin about how the run game just wasn't up to par for Alabama here this year, but I still think Jam Miller is one of those great running backs. He had to deal with injuries basically all season, so you have to wonder if that started to hamper his performance a little bit. I've also been outspoken about the offensive line under Kalen DeBoer. That might have been a problem there as well, but still over 500 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns when he missed a boatload of games. I still remember that Missouri game this year where, ironically, it was during that stretch where Scott just talked about when Alabama went on that 4-game run where they just beat everyone in their way, all top 25 teams. That was one of Jam Miller's best games up until he had to leave due to a concussion.
Yep, so Jam Miller needs to show 2 things: that he's durable, number one, and that his shoulder is fine, and he's had some other issues at the beginning of the year, but also, too, that he can run the ball effectively. Meanwhile, there's some Auburn guys there here as well. For these are the rest of the Alabama guys. Josh Cuevas had a great end of his season. Came back from that injury, looked really good late. Tim Keenan, he was also banged up a little bit early on, missed the first few games, but then he came back late. LT Overton on the defensive line also expected to make a big run there for Alabama. Keenan was seen as a guy that could have been a first-round draft pick for a while, but he's also one of those guys that can rush the passer there too. So we'll be glad to see them there as well. And these are the 2 Auburn guys, Jeremiah Wright and Kieron Crawford, will represent the Tigers. With new head coach Alex Golish coming in on Wednesday. Also, the home of the 68 Ventures Bowl and the home of South Alabama football is Hancock Whitney Stadium. And Clancy Callahan from WKRG talked a little bit about how Hancock Whitney Stadium makes the shift from bowl season and college football season to the Senior Bowl.
Some might say the best place to see the field is from the 50-yard line, but really, it's from up there.
April May Mitchell Field got a total transformation for the 76th Annual Senior Bowl. But this didn't happen overnight.
The people sitting in the stands, they just show up and it's magic. It's just done.
What the fans don't see is the dozens of buckets of paint, massive stencils, and days of painting.
I want it to be perfect.
Kevin Grimes and his crew from Turf Plus are the grounds crew behind the bowl.
Our first Senior Bowl was in 2013, back when it was at Ladd Stadium.
12 years later, and the game's been moved to Hancock Whitney Stadium at the University of South Alabama. It was a move that brought some unique challenges.
We have all the South Alabama logos that we have to cover up to get ready to put down the Senior Bowl logos.
The field is covered in permanent turf. That means that giant Jaguar at midfield and the end zones aren't painted on. So when you redesign the field, you have to cover it up so that original design doesn't show through.
It adds a good day to what we're trying to get accomplished, and we're going to cover anything that's white with a green. Any place where the stencil won't cover.
And once the field is nice and green, it's time for the stencils.
Yeah, putting the stencils down is the toughest. It's the worst part to me.
Moving this field width size stencil from one end zone to the next, plus the midfield logo and the sponsors, and a smaller logo. But once the outline's there, now comes the fun part, the colored paint.
It's kind of a paint by numbers is what I call it. There's no artistry to it. It really isn't.
And this is a fresh set of paint by numbers. The logo got a redesign this year.
The design process actually takes a while. It's not something that you just come up with. Game week is something we work forward to all year. Senior Bowl is so much more than just a game week.
Months of preparation, days of painting, all leading up to the Senior Bowl on January 31st. In Mobile, Clancy Callahan, WKRG News 5.
Great stuff and great insight there on the transformation of Hancock Whitney Stadium. As we said, 31st is the game. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 27th to the 29th are the practice days. Coming up next here on Southeast Sports Plus, we close up hour number 1 with our overreactions now that the college football season is in the books. Stay with us. We're back here on Southeast Sports Plus, closing up hour number 1 here. And something that we do a lot during the course of the season is we offer our initial overreactions. And these are quite purposeful, big, broad statements that we have week to week. And then, of course, those things fluctuate. And they're meant to be a little ridiculous. But now that the season is officially over, and we now know the final AP poll. We now know the national champion. We want to issue our season-ending overreactions.
Yes, and these will be the last exclusively football overreactions until the draft. We'll do our NFL draft overreactions, SEC style. So
right.
I'll go ahead and kick us off here. Curt Cignetti, I said this the other day, this is the best single-season coaching job of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I still think the best coaching career of all time will always be Nick Saban.
Right.
But what Cignetti was able to do with mostly JMU transfers, only 8 4-stars on that roster, and turn them into an undefeated powerhouse. I mean, they took down Ohio State, who had a boatload of 5-stars. They had Jeremiah Smith, they had Julian Say, and all of these guys. They had Miami, who I believe had a decent amount of 5-stars and 4-stars.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, they had the least amount of 4 and 5 stars in the CFP semifinals by far. And what he was able to do with this team, just dominating everyone, bulldozing Alabama, bulldozing Oregon, won a close one against Miami. It was just the greatest coaching job of all time. Now, I'll bring it back to the SEC. Now, looking at next year, LSU should be the early favorite just because of the transfer portal class that they brought in.
Yeah.
I still think Sam Levitt's a little bit overrated. I'm sorry, Tiger fans, but I wouldn't put all of my hopes and dreams into that foot, because it's been a bit of a problem for him, especially this past year. And the SEC, they end the Big Ten streak next year.
Ooh,
I think it's time. It's time.
Okay, I like it.
Let's
I
see
like it. All right, so now for me, I am going to piggyback off of your point about Coach Cignetti having the best coaching job of all time, but I'll caveat it with this. His blueprint is now going to be the new face for everyone.
Yeah.
And I believe that what we have now, when I say blueprint, not necessarily the 4 and 5 stars, I think most guys will still go for the premier talent, but I mean production over the potential of that production.
Yeah.
So I believe that we will start to see every team do it the way he did it. Go get a guy that's a baller somewhere else, because you think about it, the top 3 schools ended up being the Cal transfer. I'm talking about quarterbacks here.
Yep.
Cal transfer is the national champion. Georgia transfer is your second place, and Ferris State transfer is your number 3 squad.
Yeah.
And it keeps going even after that, inside the top 10 there as well. I think that Cignetti only laid a blueprint which made everybody else recalibrate the way they think about roster management. Yeah. The blueprint now has begun. SEC, it's now time to retake the throne. I don't know if they will. That's why I laid a blanket to the SEC. And my last point, I love the way Texas played Michigan. I love the way Arch looked in that bowl game.
He looked good.
Call me a prisoner. Call me a prisoner of the moment. I think Texas is my number 1 team in my way too early poll. So
I think that Mississippi State game was the best thing that's ever happened to him, because after that, he looked impeccable.
That's exactly right. Yes. Yeah. Yes, he did.
And now he's got a wide receiver that won't drop a ball for him.
I know. And he's got a defense that'll be led by Will Muschamp. Lots of good things happening for Texas this year. Keep it right here. Hour 2 of Southeast Sports Plus is next.
In our neck of the woods, sports is tradition. Sports is passion. Sports is family. Sports is fun. Welcome to our house. This is Southeast Sports Plus Live with Gerhard Mathangani.
Hard to believe it took all the way until early January to pick up a win on the road, but that's the case for the Auburn Tigers. They got a few neutral site wins, but the first win truly on the road came in Oxford. It took down an Ole Miss basketball team that had somewhat found its footing in the course of the year. Gerhard Pettiford, 17 points in the big win for first-year head coach Stephen Pearl and company. Welcome to Southeast Sports Plus, hour number 2. We begin with big basketball action. We revisit those midweek games, especially the games there on Tuesday. Lots of them there on Tuesday. And Patrick, I think that this is an Auburn team that identity was kind of the key thing they were fighting. Not just necessarily on the court, but off the court as well. We even made mention of the fact that Stephen Pearl kind of challenged his guys to find themselves and to be more mature, and it looks like that message is transitioning to the court as well.
Yeah, and it felt like, Stephen Pearl was trying to find a way to get through to his team, because it seemed like when you were watching this, and especially since some of these guys weren't showing up on time, kind of like we're slacking off, almost like the substitute teacher type ordeal, where it's like, you've got your normal teacher in, they're strict, you want to follow what they do, you try to be the best for them, but when you come into class and the substitute's there, it's like, oh, hey, what's up, Jimmy?
Yeah.
Great day. Let's see what we can get away with here in this class. Let's just be the class clown for a day. And it just seemed like whatever Steven was saying to his team, it just didn't translate. And I don't know what was said behind closed doors to Gerhard Pettiford or some of these other guys, but I mean, Gerhard stepped up in a big way on Tuesday with those 17 points after what seemed like a quiet start to SEC play.
What I found interesting is that they made Gerhard Pettiford available for interviews right before that Ole Miss game, and he had talked about the defensive identity, and what this team needed to do. And it makes me think, to your point, that there has been a conversation and maybe some maturing that has gone on behind the scenes that has led to what we're seeing there on the court for this team. And then you mentioned it, got those 17 points, a ferocious dunk there towards the end, which I know it's only a dunk on the road, which is not the same juice as a dunk at home, but it just feels like you got heads up. It just feels like you're getting a more spirited effort from this group. And it really couldn't come at a better time, because this is a really interesting kind of curve here in Auburn's scheduling as they go on the road this week.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point. I don't think you could have asked for a better time to have one of your best games of the season coming up to this point against a good Ole Miss team. Like, don't get me wrong, you can take a look at their record right now. I think that they're playing above what their record shows.
Absolutely.
This game didn't really show that, but they came into the game on a 3-game win streak, gutted out some pretty close games. Patton Pinkins had a really nice buzzer beater against Georgia, followed it up with another one against Mississippi State. They were on that 3-game win streak, and it seemed like everything was starting to roll in the Rebels' direction. While this game, it just didn't seem like it. It was honestly a little bit surprising seeing some of the effort from some of these guys. Like Malik Dia, I think I said this yesterday, Malik Dia and Gerhard Pettiford kind of came in to the season and have started the season the same way. They came back from last year's squads, had a lot of hype going in around them, and it just seems like they haven't stepped up into that role that their respective head coaches have empowered them in. And it's just been a little bit of a disappointment. But we saw what Gerhard did against Ole Miss on Tuesday. Definitely one of his better games of the season. You could argue that the Georgia one was the best game, but he did end up fouling out. This time, Gerhard ended up scoring 17 points, but also dished out a few assists. You would like to see the assist total get up a little bit, so that way it's not just, his scoring. Like, we don't want him to turn into like a Jordan Pope type ordeal. The scoring is going to be important moving forward.
Absolutely. And if you're Auburn, I think another glass half full stat, they shot 2 of 17 from downtown. 2 of 17, and they still got a 12-point win. That makes you flip it on the other side with Ole Miss. And really, outside of, as you mentioned, Patton Pinkins and A.J. Storr, who came off the bench, they didn't get much production there on offense, and I feel like this was a team, Ole Miss, that was surging going into it. This has to be deflating a little bit for Coach Chris Beard and company.
Yeah, and I still don't know. Again, I'm not in the locker room. I don't make the decisions. There's a reason why I'm sitting here and talking about them and not the one that actually putting the lineup out on the floor. But what I have seen from A.J. Storr screams starter today.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's supposed to be the spark off the bench,
right.
But I mean, you're not really getting a spark from your starters.
Yeah.
Kind of like the whole situation that Courtney Mims outlined with Arkansas earlier this week. Nick Pringle is one of these older guys. She wanted to challenge the older guys to start to step up, not so much the younger guys. And coming off the bench, Malik Ewan has been playing great. So you would almost expect Malik Ewan to start over Nick Pringle, and
right.
It just hasn't gone that way. So I'd be interested to see how Chris Beard handles this next game against Kentucky, but, I mean, he didn't really get the effort that he was expecting out of his guys.
Right, and he wants to see that effort come out. He talked a little bit after that Auburn game, frustrated, of course, about this team's effort before they head to Rupp Arena.
Never been a coach to throw the players under the bus, but have always been a coach to tell the truth. Tonight we got out-coached. Got to put our guys in better position offensively in the first half, and defensively in the second half. So, I'm not saying that we didn't contribute to tonight's disappointing performance, but on the other hand, I don't know. We keep saying this is professional basketball in a lot of ways, and so I think what will come with that over time, sooner than later, is players will have to answer questions that maybe they haven't answered in the past. But I shared that sentiment before I watched the film. We just had a lot of guys out there not playing at their most competitive, physical, potential, talent game, and it's disappointing. And again, give Auburn credit. Like, the story tonight is absolutely the fact that we didn't show up to play in a lot of ways, but don't take away from their game plan and their performance. I mean, they were the more physical team. They demanded to get to the free throw line, and they out-rebounded us convincingly. So, hats off to Auburn. They played really well tonight.
So Auburn's got a big game this weekend. The Ole Miss Rebels will look to try to get a weekend win at Rupp Arena. Let's flip it over to South Carolina and Oklahoma. These are two teams that walked into that game with one win in the SEC. So somebody had to win. You thought that South Carolina had been playing well, playing competitive basketball, and there's no such thing as moral victories, but they got a real victory, 85-76, and Coach Lamont Paris and company really needed that one on early in the midweek game.
Yeah, and we've been talking about leaders when we're talking about Ole Miss and Auburn. I think one of the leaders for South Carolina is Meechie Johnson. We've talked all year about the back and forth between staying 2 years at South Carolina, then going 2 years at Ohio State, and then back and forth. Now he's back at South Carolina. He dropped 20 points, but 13 of those came at the charity stripe. So I think he's one of those guys, and Mariah Ross really explained this well for us. He's one of those slasher-type guards where he'll get in the paint, he'll draw the fouls. I'll make a Syracuse comparison if there are any Syracuse fans out there, kind of like a Judah Mintz, where he'll just drive to the paint looking to draw the foul.
Right.
And I mean, every team. Here's my 2 cents on what these basketball teams need. Every team needs a guy like this, because if you have a guy that isn't afraid to go in the paint and try to get to the basket, you can get some of these guys in foul trouble.
100%.
I mean, you look at Santos Surreal and Mo Wagi, which in this game, I know Mo Wagi is on Oklahoma, didn't pick up a foul, but still only had 17 minutes. Meechie Johnson can be one of those guys that can really put the pressure on the defensive side for some of these bigger guys and get them into foul trouble, and then that's like a game within the game, so to speak.
Correct. Yeah, he kind of had that little chess match there. Yeah. Elijah Strong also came up big, 17 points on 7 of 14 from the floor there in that matchup. Coach Paris, his response after that big game, or after the Arkansas game where they absolutely got blown off the floor, and then being able to pick up a big win there over the Sooners.
I hope that this is who we are in terms of a response. I challenged the guys after that Arkansas game and going into the Auburn game, I told him it was, and I never say this to the guys, that this was such an important game. I mean, the most important game that we would play all year was Auburn. And not in terms of winning or losing, not in terms of who shot the ball well or played well, but just in terms of who we were going to be as a team. And were we a group that was going to respond and compete and play in a way that we expected to play well and to win, or were we going to just be fair weather guys that when the shots are falling, we play good, and when the shots are not falling, we play poorly? And so I thought we answered. I thought we did a really good job in that Auburn game of responding in those ways. You know, we still only shot 32% from three, but you go to a place like that, it's difficult to win. They had just beaten Arkansas by 100 or whatever it was, and then you go in there and with a mediocre shooting day down the stretch, you're right there with a chance. So response was incredibly important for our team. So to answer your question, is I hope that that's who we are as competitors.
So that's Coach Perry is talking about his response after the Arkansas game. Now let's touch on Arkansas because they got that win, scoring 108 points over South Carolina, then lost to Georgia, but picked up a nice win there over Vanderbilt, scored 93 points in that game. It seems like Coach Calipari, his team, they feel unbeatable at home. They haven't lost at home, but it feels like they've also found a blueprint of the way they want to play.
Yeah, and that guy right there, Darius Acuff Jr., I mean, he is a sure-in. I'm just going to go ahead and pencil him in right now. He is the best freshman in the SEC this year. I mean, what he's able to do for this team. Coach Cal is one of those old-school coaches. He's still going to recruit out of high school.
Right.
He's going to get most of his guys, most of the guys that get playing time for Coach Cal are going to be those freshmen and sophomores. I believe they have a combined 11 freshmen and sophomores on the team, and then you fill out some of these other spots with your older guys. But it's been the older guys that haven't really stepped up for him. So I'll be looking forward to, as we move down to the stretch here in the last 12 or so games of the SEC schedule, if these older guys can start to help Coach Cal and company.
Yeah, I think Coach Cal, one of his strengths, because he does coach a lot of young guys, he has to almost be intentional about bringing teams together and being able to define, hey, who has what role no matter what class you are, from freshman to senior. Coach Cal talking about what defines a team after the game.
I told him after, like everybody says you guys play really well and then you get arrogant. You got to prove that wrong. But, you know, playing on the road, I told the team there's two things that define your team. One is going on the road and playing your best basketball. Doesn't mean you win, but you're playing your best basketball on the road, and everybody knows it. Everybody watches it, and they say, man, these dudes here, they go on the road and play just as well. That's how you define your team. Second way is shoot 36% and win. That defines your team. That means you got tough, hard-nosed dudes that'll do what they have to win. We're not quite there yet, because if 2 or 3 of your guys aren't that way, it's hard to be that way. You shoot 36%, it's going to be a close game.
Coach Cal always summing it up perfectly. Coming up next here on Southeast Sports Plus, we head to the boot and talk with Chesa Boucher. Stay with us. We're back here on Southeast Sports Plus. Please welcome in our good friend Chessa Boucher, who joins us from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Chessa, always good to see you. I think that this is a interesting time in basketball for both the men and the women for a lot of different reasons going into this season. On the men's side, maybe about 2 weeks ago, about a week and a half ago now, they took Kentucky to the brink. And it feels like ever since then, it's been trying to find their footing here. We're a few games into this conference schedule. Patrick and I have talked about we're kind of separating the good from the bad, and it feels like they really can go either way. What is your take on this team now that we have a few conference games in, but still the meat of the schedule still to come?
Yeah, I hate the way the season has gone. I think losing Jalen Reed was a huge blow for them inside, and then losing DJ Thomas, who just came back, played a few minutes against Florida, looked good, but typically he kind of takes over a game, and he is that guy that they go to. I think that they found some key pieces with King, who stepped up in his absence and made some big plays down the stretch against Missouri, and they actually won their first SEC game. So that was promising. But the issue is this team seems to find a way to lose. Most of the times you think teams are, hey, they're going to find a way to win. They finally find a way to win against Missouri, and then they go to Gainesville. We all know the defending national champs. They're talented. They're big inside. They just couldn't match up to them, and now they go back on the road against Arkansas this weekend, who has embarrassed a lot of teams. And so for me, it's just they can't seem to put all the pieces together. The injuries are the biggest issue, because what we've seen from Matt McMahon teams in the past, he either had great point guard play and not a true big guy, or he had a great big guy but didn't have a true point guard. So I feel like with DJ Thomas, he is that true point guard. He's one of the best in the country, but again, he's missed all but one SEC game. He's coming back. He will play against the Hogs this weekend, but I just feel like they went through a gauntlet there. I think the back half of the schedule is a little bit more friendly for them, but it was games that they shouldn't have lost like they did against South Carolina. South Carolina shot lights out.
Right.
And they hadn't done that all year. And so it's like something's got to give in terms either defensively, they got to get it done, or they have to go with some other guys and say, hey, it's up to you. But it just, to me, it just never feels like they're all clicking on all cylinders. And I feel like, especially this time of year, this is when you should be clicking at the right time to make that push. And I just don't know if it's too late. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope we come back and they finish 7-3 in the league in the back half. And I'm like, hey, we're going to the big day. And I'm like, hey, I was so wrong, and I will eat that. But it just, what we've seen from Matt McMahon teams, it doesn't seem super promising.
I'll be honest with you, Chessa, the reason why I was asking is because I don't know how much LSU men's basketball will be talking for the rest of the season, so I want to be able to get at least one question in here. Meanwhile, on the women's side, this is where the rubber is really meeting the road here for this basketball team, because the SEC is so stacked, and we saw that in a couple of rough losses a couple of weeks ago, but now the ladies have reeled off now 3 straight wins in a really, really tight, really tough contested game against Texas a couple of weeks ago, or last week. Got the win there and then beat Oklahoma, and now it's back to the road against Texas A&M. What do you make here of this squad as they continue to find their footing in a very, very deep class?
Yeah, and I told y'all this from the beginning, from the start of the season. I think this is the most talented team that Kim Mulkey has had at LSU, and that's saying a lot, especially with winning the national championship in year 2. I think the issue was this team is young, and you're relying on a lot of inexperienced players. You only had 2 starters from last year's squad. You bring in 8 new faces. This team is trying to learn, trying to grow, trying to kind of figure it out on the fly. It's hard to figure that out and not face any adversity with the soft non-conference slate that they played. Kim Mulkey is always scheduled that way. I don't think Kim Mulkey's ever going to change that. I think that's just what she does and who she is. But I think you have to look at the first 5 games in SEC play. 4 out of the 5 were either ranked in the top 13 or higher. And so you're going on the road against, a 13 in Oklahoma last week. They basically blew the doors off of OU there, won by 19 points. I think the biggest difference from this team is I feel like Jada Richard is the point guard Kim Mulkey has been missing at her time in Baton Rouge. And what I say by that is Kim Mulkey, when you play point guard for Kim Mulkey, you're not that scoring machine. You are facilitating. You were the general on the floor. That's who Kim Mulkey was. That's how she played, and that's what she wants you to do. I think it was a tough transition for Jada Richard as a true freshman because she's coming from Lafayette, who won 4 state championships, and she knew how to score the basketball. It's hard going from that mentality to, hey, now I'm running this thing and trying to learn a Kim Mulkey system. I think her performance in Norman was exceptional, 21 points, but besides that, defensively clamping down their number 1 leading scorer, only held her to 11. Aaliyah Chavez didn't look like she was a leading scorer. She looked like a true freshman. And so to me, I was like, oh, okay, Jada, I see you. So to me, I think that's the difference maker of saying, hey, she's got that true point guard. She's got that leader. She's got her floor general. And I think with Flau'jae Johnson and Michaela Williams, it's either her night or it's Flau'jae's night or it's Fool Wiley's night, so they have a lot of weapons. I just think they needed to get punched in the mouth, even though it was an SEC play, and I think they're learning how to play together and to play through it, and I think that's been the biggest difference maker.
Speaking of Flau'jae, now that we're past the halfway point of the season, what have you seen from her so far, and what areas does she still need to grow in as we head towards, I don't want to say the meat of the schedule yet, because you've got a few more games before that really starts to kick in with Alabama, with Texas?
I think sometimes Flau'jae gets in her own way. And what I mean by that, like, it's easy when you're not scoring the ball to get down and to, you're trying too much. A lot of the times when Flau'jae, if she's not shooting the ball really well, she's forcing it. And she doesn't have to, but I understand why she does it. A year ago, if she wasn't scoring 18 to 20 points, that team was not winning. And so to me, I feel like because of what she's been through this season, because she did have a game where she didn't score, and that was just the second time ever in her career in Baton Rouge, I think she's learning, like, hey, I don't have to do it all, and I can still be that leader, and I can still be that voice for everybody else. And I even asked Kim Mulkey in their post-game press conference when they beat Texas, like, do you see more accountability? And Kim was like, yeah, I do. I think they do a lot of stuff outside of practice and games, which they hold each other accountable, and I think we're seeing that on the court as well. And I think Flau'jae she's a big reason for that.
Absolutely. We heard from Flau'jae Johnson about being able to affect the game without the basketball, and a couple things: being conditioned and playing great defense.
No, you just have to be conditioned. I think conditioning has been a big part of what we talked about when playing this type of game with a lot of possessions, and just not getting sped up. I feel like we did a good job with running time off the clock, and even a good job of making them run their sets. I feel like a lot of the easy baskets they got were in transition, but in the half court we really made them run their sets and get that next pass and that next. So I feel like everybody did a good job just running with them and just doing our best in that way. I mean, when you talk about defense, you got to mention Jada Richard. 3 for 14, Aaliyah Chavez, that was her main assignment. I would say she did a great job just controlling the tempo on defense, getting back in transition. We had a couple of lapses in transition, but overall, Jada controlled the pace. She really controlled the whole dynamic on defense. So I would say it was her really dictating what Oklahoma did on those actions.
All right, Chessa, let's now flip to football. Basketball should be really interesting as we go over the next couple of weeks, but football is interesting right now because of the transfer portal that closed last week. However, there was a lot of talk about Lane Kiffin and maybe a mini Cold War he was trying to set off within the Ole Miss locker room in and of itself. He was able to pull out
sabotage.
Yeah, exactly. He was able to pull out a big win with TJ Daugherty now a member of the LSU Tigers. Now that the dust is settled, so to speak, with the transfer portal, where do you put this signing and what Lane was able to do there in that short period?
Man, I think it's been so impressive. I understand that there's always going to be turnover when a coach is fired and you bring in a new head coach, but for them to sign 41 guys and have the #1 transfer portal roster in the 5 years of the history of the portal roster, they've never had a class like this one, and I think that speaks volumes. I was impressed that they pulled off Prince Will Uwamane I can't say his name to save my life, but he led the SEC in sacks. That's what you need. And Lane Kiffin has talked about, especially growing up under Monty Kiffin, that it all starts with a defensive line. I think LSU struggled there throughout the season of not getting enough pressure on the quarterback. And you bring in the SEC leading sack guy. It's so impressive. And I love Lane Kiffin trolling, and I love him running his mouth. But I think when you can run your mouth and you can back it up and bring in those guys and bring in 4 dudes, not just 4 dudes from Ole Miss, and bring them to Baton Rouge and be like, all right, that's what I want.
What's Deion got? Leaders and dogs?
Yeah.
It's just, man, it's crazy because, again, y'all know that I went to Ole Miss. I got my undergrad from there. But for Lane Kiffin to sign more 5-star recruits in the first 5 days he's in Baton Rouge than his entire time in Oxford, bruh, that is a flex.
Guns. So I believe the grand total is going to be north of $20 million for this transfer portal roster. And just taking into the fact that we already talked with you about Sam Levitt. There's some concerns there with the foot injury and some of the other guys that he was able to get to come to Baton Rouge from Ole Miss. Do you think they should be in consideration for title contenders in year 1 just based off of this roster alone?
Oh, I think so. And it's crazy because, I can't even name all the dudes. I was doing my homework, and I was my hand was hurting with writing all of the background. And I was like, holy moly. For spring ball, I'm going to be like, there's so many. But I think the level of guys that they brought in speaks to the volume of this class. There's a difference. Brian Kelly brought in 18 guys last year, had the #1 transfer portal. Only 8 of them had 1 year of eligibility. Some of them were great, some of them not so much. A lot of the offensive line, they're gone. They needed to be gone. They were one of the worst offensive lines in the SEC. Couldn't protect the quarterback. But, the guys that they're bringing in here are experienced, real deal, dogs. That's what you need. But that's what we had been so accustomed to seeing in Baton Rouge. And I feel like under Brian Kelly, he got away with it because maybe they missed, maybe they weren't great at building that roster. They weren't great at evaluating talent. But Lane Kiffin, that's one thing that we can say. He's a great play caller, and he knows how to evaluate talent. And he's got the coaching staff that is putting their nose to the ground and going after it. Lane Kiffin is in New Orleans, hitting up all the schools in New Orleans yesterday and today. Bruh, I am so excited.
Flying his private jet everywhere, trying to flip everyone.
Yes. He's got no shame, and I'm about that. I'm about a coach who's ready to go after it and who wants it, and that man wants it.
Yeah, and you got to this day and age, and we've seen what the transfer portal can do. We see a national champion on Monday night that wouldn't have been a national champion without the transfer portal and everything else, and now you have the portal king right there in your backyard. Chessa, you've been so great. Thank you so much for joining us here at Southeast Sports
Showing
Plus.
off those guns.
Yeah, I was about to say, when you did this earlier, I was like, hey, I have a wardrobe request next time. Next time, go sleeveless so we can see the guns in action.
Show off the guns. I'll do that next time.
I love it. Chessa Boustein, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Y'all have a good one.
Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a hotbed right now for the transfer portal. Chessa,
I forgot to tell her. I'm going to be in Tiger Stadium for the Zach Bryan concert.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so
nice.
It's weird because I've been in Yankee Stadium, not for a Yankee game, but for a football game. And now I'll be at Tiger Stadium.
Not for a football game, but for a
Okay.
concert, which actually might be just as packed there, considering
I'm sure
how big he is. Stay with us here at Southeast Sports Plus. We break down the NFL playoffs next. back here on Southeast Sports Plus. This is one of my favorite times of year as we close the book on the college football season and now closing towards the end of the NFL season. But it's conference championship week here, Patrick. And I mean, if you're a football fan that wanted to see some different blood, so to speak, college football brought you that with Indiana and company, and now the NFL is bringing you that. I know people will say the Patriots in the dynasty, whatever, but it is a new class, so to speak, of these four teams. We'll start here in the AFC with the Patriots and Broncos.
A new twist on a 2010s classic. I mean,
great way
that's
to put
honestly
that. Great way to put that.
The first thing that I thought of. This used to be Tom Brady versus Peyton Manning,
yes.
And now it's going to be Drake May against what should have been Bo Nix, but we'll get into the Bo Nix injury in just a minute. But Drake May and what he's been able to do in his second year, it brings up the question, how embarrassing would it be for Josh Allen if Drake May were to make the Super Bowl before him? In his second year, first Super Bowl appearance.
Right.
And I mean, you could say all the circumstances,
Correct.
yada, 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 but still.
And I think, too, and you will have, like you said, you will have some people on both sides of this because they'll say, well, the Patriots were the benefactor of a very weak schedule. I think the weakest in like 25 years when they went back and diagnosed it. But for Allen, who's had the amount of talent that he's had around him in different spurts, I know this year's team wasn't great, and they fired their head coach, and they've had consternation with their
Terry
GM.
Pagula just started talking for the first time in 6 years, and it showed.
This past week has not been a great one PR-wise for the Buffalo Bills. But you're right. I think that it would be probably less embarrassing and way more deflating if you're a Bills person or a Bills in management there, because I think that the Patriots, the future just looks really bright for this team. I think the over-under on the wins for this team was 8 wins. 8.5 wins was the over-under. They smashed that, won 14 games, went 14-3, and now on the cusp of a Super Bowl championship. This is a team that had to fire their coach last year in Gerhard Mayo. They bring in Mike Vrabel, and here you see the run to this Super Bowl, looking to keep this success going.
8-0 in games away from Gillette Stadium.
That is insane.
All of their losses have come at home.
That is insane. And one of them, I remember vividly being a Patriots fan. One of them at the beginning of the season was to the Oakland Raiders, which now that loss looks ridiculous. Yeah. And the other one, they lost to Pittsburgh Steelers. They put the ball on the ground 5 times. And
I remember watching that game.
And barely lost that game there as well. So even in games where they haven't played well, they were able to end up getting wins there. There is a path to me, though, for Denver to win this game, and it is through their defense. And I'll talk about it from the Patriots standpoint, because the Patriots they've turned the ball over quite a bit here, probably to a semi-concerning level here for this team. I just feel like if you're Denver, it's I know the Patriots are favored, but it's not crazy given the fact that the Patriots have given the ball up.
Yeah, and I almost feel like if you are Denver, you have to rely on your defense in this game, because you just don't know what you're going to expect out of Jarrett Stidham this game. I mean, it's hard to put on the guy, hey, you need to go out there, throw the ball 40 times a game and throw for 300 yards and lead us to the Super Bowl. I just don't see that as a realistic possibility. But you're going up, Drake May's going up against Nick Bonino. He's going up against Pat Surtain. And this is a vaunted defense that has been able to turn the ball over on the offense. What does Womack say? We call them takeaways.
Oh, takeaways. Yeah.
They've been able to generate takeaways.
The language of it is takeaways, right.
And so I think that they could get Drake May flustered. I see a scenario where Drake May is flustered early in this game, and the Mile High City just starts getting crazy. They're going to go crazy for this one.
Absolutely. You mentioned the fact that they've been successful on the road. We heard from Mike Vrabel earlier this week about them going on the road and the mentality that it takes.
Well, I mean, I think we try to preach it through the entire offseason and being able to establish an identity that travels, overcoming mistakes that happen in the game, which there always are. And I think that you have to be resilient. I mean, there's going to be some swings and momentum. You're going to have to be able to handle the environment offensively and not put yourself in bad situations because, your operation isn't very good. So there's a lot of things that we try to practice, knowing that we're going to have to play half of our games on the road.
There's been a lot of SEC representation throughout the playoffs, and especially at the quarterback position for the Denver Broncos. It's a double former SEC quarterback and former double Auburn quarterbacks going from Bo Nix, who unfortunately broke his ankle in the divisional round, to Jarrett Stidham, another former Auburn player. These two went in reverse order as far as where they stood at Auburn. Bo Nix filled in for Jarrett Stidham. Now the other way around. What do you expect there from number 8?
You know, I don't know, because this is one of those wild card games. We didn't really know what to expect from Phillip Rivers when he came back and played against the Seahawks. And in my opinion, I thought Phillip Rivers had one of the better games, especially for a guy that hadn't played in 5 years. But it would be hard to believe that Denver wouldn't run the football a ton this game, not only with R.J. Harvey. I believe J.K. Dobbins is starting to trend towards returning, so that would be a big help here too. But I just don't see Jarrett Stidham throwing 30-plus passes this game, because you don't – if you're Sean Payton, and Sean Payton is one of the best coaches in the NFL. I would expect him to have a great game plan cooked up, and I would expect Jarrett Stidham, as I mentioned the other day, Patriots don't do well in championship-style games against backup quarterbacks. Nick Foles said it too.
They don't have a good history with it as of right now. I'm also right there with you. I don't think they'll ask him to do a lot. If the defense could turn it over and give Stidham some short fields, lean on the running game, I think they have a shot here. Of course, we got to do some predictions. We did it yesterday. We did it with the NFC. Now I got to do it with the AFC.
Give me the Broncos.
Oh, wow.
Give me the Broncos.
The Broncos to pull off the upset.
I am high on the Broncos right now.
Okay. I'm going to go with my homer pick. I'm going to pick the Patriots. I do think it'll be closer to what they expect. I mean, I just don't see this team losing to a backup quarterback, and this just feels like a team of destiny to me, ready to go to Super Bowl 60 there in the Bay Area. Southeast Sports Plus continues after the break. We'll talk some college basketball next. Closing moments here on Southeast Sports Plus. It is another action-packed weekend in SEC men's basketball. Week 4, if you can believe it or not. Teams are already back on the floor. Some major games that will create some separation. I think next week's topics as we go into the week ahead will look very different as compared to this week. Going into last week, most teams sat there between 3-2 and 2-3. We'll have a lot of separation after Saturday's action. It'll start at 11 a.m. at Rupp Arena when Ole Miss visits Kentucky. Then at noon, you have the Texas Longhorns will host the Georgia Bulldogs. Missouri and Oklahoma will meet up at 1 o'clock. Then at 2 o'clock or 2:30, you have the matchup between Texas A&M, Buckyball, and South Carolina on the court. At late afternoon action over there in Gainesville, the Auburn Tigers, Florida Gators match up. Two kind of hot basketball teams right now.
For a rematch.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Mississippi State and Vandy. Vandy looking to stop a little skid there in Starkville. Alabama back at home against Tennessee. All eyes might be on that one for a lot of reasons. Arkansas will host LSU, looking to pull off the upset there. So it should be a really interesting weekend, Patrick. I mentioned on that front end there that I do believe that we will start to see some separation here this week, because we saw it when I said this past week where you had 3-2 and 2-3. Well, let's just say you go on a 2-game winning streak, 5-2 versus 2-5 is very different as you go into the rest of the regular season.
And I think, as you mentioned, this is going to be when these teams start to separate themselves and actually be true contenders, just based on not only the record, but the way they're winning these games. I mean, we talked about Ole Miss earlier in the week before the Auburn game. They ripped off a nice little 3-game win streak. Unfortunately, got it snapped against Auburn, but they're going to have another tough opponent coming up on Saturday at 11 a.m. against a Kentucky team that's kind of riding high right now. Another one of those teams that's on that 3-game win streak, and the first 2 of those wins, I mean, goodness, we've been talking about it all week. This team is just so confusing.
They are.
Because one night they look so good, and then another night it's kind of like is this really a team that paid $22 million for a roster?
Right. And it feels like, too, you're kind of getting that up and down effort, seemingly up and down. It feels like it was when most teams are up and down like game to game. This team feels like they ride like week-long streaks. Like when they started SEC play, it was terrible, and now they're on a nice little run here. But it just feels like they could get got. And Ole Miss could be a team that gets them at Rupp Arena on Saturday. So we'll find out how all this rolls out.
And I mean,
this week.
We did talk earlier in the show about Charles Bediako, and you just said it perfectly. I think a lot of eyes are going to be on this game. Not only eyes that come from the SEC, but I want to say probably college basketball fans in general, because this, as we talked about on yesterday's show, this is going to be what sets the precedent for years to come. Will we start to see these G Leaguers start to pour back into the NCAA and end up playing in college basketball? Or will the NCAA put their foot down? And I know there's the NCAA is gaining some traction there on potentially there being punishments if he were to play in this game for Alabama. So that's just, the storylines are endless, but I think that Alabama is going to have a national audience on them this weekend.
Absolutely, and I think the Bediako thing is interesting for a couple of different reasons. Number one is the fact that with all these other guys, no disrespect to them, but you think about the guy Najee that signed with Baylor, and then the other guys that quote unquote play professional ball and then came back. Most of them really aren't known commodities. Bediako's a known commodity because he played for a good college basketball team. He played with Brandon Miller and them 3 years ago. I believe they were the number 1 seed or number 2 seed. They were a top 5 seed. So he was a star player. He wasn't the leading scorer, but he was a star player on a team that made a lot of noise in college basketball. All these other guys are just seemingly like they're good basketball players, but they were not necessarily in the national consciousness. So that's why I feel like this game will be a lot more it will be watch a lot more to see how many times Bediako is shown on the game broadcast, how many times that storyline gets brought up, and the fact that this game should be a pretty good game between two good teams in the league.
It definitely should be. Tennessee's coming off of a game where they just could not I don't even think you can explain the collapse that they had against Kentucky, and then Alabama is riding that nice win streak that they've had. But I think, as you mentioned, this is probably the first situation where we have a player that is based in North America.
Right.
Some of these other players like Najee, they're coming over from Europe, from overseas.
Right. Or they skipped college basketball altogether.
Exactly.
They're Americans, but they didn't play in college. They played at that in
It's like that Cal press conference.
Correct.
It's just, how can you put a limit on what these players are?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But you know what time it is.
It's time.
We like to end the show with some fun little predictions. Here we go. Number 21, Georgia. We're going to go no money lines this week.
Okay.
We're just going to go straight up who wins these games.
No, you mean 21. No spreads? No spreads, just straight money line?
No, just straight money line, no spreads, my fault.
Okay.
Number 21, Georgia at Texas.
This is an interesting game because Georgia, I thought, was one of those teams that, when their offense is rolling, it is really, really rolling. And Texas is a team that I thought could give some teams some scares early on. The Moody Center last week, we talked about it, and you've talked about it. It's got a little woo-woo to it. I do think for 1 week, the woo-woo ends. And I think that Georgia comes away with the win. Because here's the thing. I think that Coach Mike White will show his team the amount of noise, the amount of pressure they put on Vanderbilt a week ago, and how the Moody Center basically got them out of their game.
Yeah.
And I think that Georgia will be prepared for it because of what happened to Vanderbilt. And because of that, I think Georgia makes all the plays to get the win.
I think, well, we've talked about Sampto Surreal, and it seems like it's going to be Sampto Surreal up against Vocatitis there on Texas. I think in this game, one guy that you got to pay attention to is probably Blue Kane, because Jeremiah Wilkinson will more than likely be on Dalen Swain. So it's likely going to be Blue Kane taking on Jordan Pope. And as we've talked about on the show with our friends over there in Austin, Jordan Pope is really one of those guys that can only score. He doesn't really help you in other aspects of the game. If Blue Kane has a good game, Georgia gets this one done, and I think he does. Georgia gets the win on the road.
Interesting. Okay, I like that.
Here we go.
I like that.
The rematch that, honestly, I've been waiting for since April 4th of 2025. I think it was Auburn at number 16, Florida.
I want to make a case for the Auburn Tigers. They just went on the road. They got a big win over Ole Miss in the midweek game. But this is a team that's been a little inconsistent. And in the same way that I think that Georgia will be ready for the noise at Texas, and there's really no way to quantify this. And so I'm glad that we're not doing this against the number, because against the number I think would be even harder. But I do think that there is a part of Florida that is kind of woken up. And it started when they started this win streak here in the SEC. They're perfect 9-0 at home. They're one of a few teams that are undefeated on their home floor. I think Auburn gives them a scare. I think Tahad Pettiford plays well. I think they get good play out of the Keyshawn's. I just think that Florida does too much. You mentioned the big guys. You mentioned Samado Sorrell in for Georgia. I think the big guys take care of business for Florida down there in the post. I think it's just a little too much for Auburn. I think Florida takes care of business at home.
I think for me, in my opinion, this game, it all depends on how badly did that loss last year hurt for Tahad Pettiford.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he's one of the only guys that is returning from last year's squad, since they were they had so much experience last year. And then Tahad was obviously one of the best six men in the country. And I know it hurt him at that time, but it seems like he hasn't used that as fuel yet this year. He had a nice game against Ole Miss. Maybe that's something that he could build on. He had a nice game against Georgia, unfortunately fouled out. But if he is able to take over the game late, I think Auburn gets this one done. But if he doesn't, I think Florida runs away with it by far. If I had to make a prediction, I think Florida runs away with this one.
Yeah. Me too. Right now they're running a 5-game winning streak. 9-0. I said they were undefeated. I didn't give you the number 9-0 so far at home. I think they make it double digits.
Vanderbilt at Mississippi State.
I feel like it's one of those where somebody's got to win. Both teams coming on a losing streak. Vanderbilt, who just ran through the non-conference, started well in the SEC. They've lost 3 games in a row. Well, the ultimate slump buster, so to speak, I think would be Mississippi State.
Oh, yes.
Because Mississippi State right now, they have been competitive. It's not like they've been bad. They've been competitive. They just keep coming up short. I think the atmosphere will be a little crazy as Mississippi State tries to get a win. This will be the highest-ranked team, I think, so far this year going into Starkville. I don't think it's enough. I think Coach Mark Byington and company, they stop the bleeding for now. They continue. Mississippi State's losing streak now extend it to 5 games and get back in the win column.
You know, Mississippi State plays some teams tough, and I know they didn't have a great game against Texas A&M on Wednesday. But you look at the Ole Miss game; that one came down to the wire. Another buzzer beat. It took an incredible game from LeBaron Philon for Alabama to go in there and win.
Right.
I think Vanderbilt, I don't see them losing 4 games in a row. I think this is where that little skid ends for the Commodores. Mark Byington and company, they get back in the win column with a 10-point win on the road.
And you're really good at this. I'm going to do one of these.
Okay, here we go.
Kind of one of these prop picks.
Yes.
Give me Tyler Tanner. For 30.
Okay.
I think that they need a big guy, big guy.
Wow.
Big game from their star, and I think you called it with Jalen Stone at Missouri. Jaden Stone a couple weeks ago. I think that it's one of those situations for Tanner this week.
All right, since we want to do these prop bets all of a sudden, I'm not even going to go points. I'm going to do AK Okereke, 10+ rebounds.
All right, I like it.
He's going to clean the glass. He's going to kick it out so that way Tyler Tanner gets his points. Bada bing, bada boom, Tennessee at Alabama.
This is an interesting one because there are a lot of potential distractions in this one. There are a lot of potential distractions for Alabama. And I think that because of all of the hype with Bediako and the fact that college football is now over, everybody is now focusing on basketball, I think that crowd at Coleman Coliseum will be insane. I think there will be a lot of people that are going to want Nate Oates to put Bediako in the game. It'll be a storyline. I don't know how much it will be a distraction for Alabama. I think they'll need, going back to the stars, I think they need a big game out of both Aiden Holloway and LeBaron Feinlon. I do think they get it done. I am so interested. I might watch this all 40 minutes of this one just to see if Bediako comes in the game. I don't think he plays, though. I don't think he plays. I think it's an interesting storyline, but I think Alabama gets the win even without him playing.
I don't know, because it seems like, according to some of the reports that have started to come out, it seems like there's a growing trend that he might actually play, which is kind of insane.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know why you would run that risk of retaliation from the NCAA.
Right.
As we
Unless you think it's only going to be a one-game retaliation because that injunction hearing is next Tuesday.
That's true, but if you go back to what we heard from Mark Pope earlier, the NCAA decides who gets into the NCAA tournament.
That's right.
You don't know if this is going to come back to haunt them if Alabama were to win this game and he were to play. But I think at the same time, he's not going to play. LeBaron Feinlon has another huge game. He's averaging north of 22 points in SEC play here. And then Aiden Holloway has a nice follow-up game as well. I think Alabama rolls in this one. Tennessee just hasn't been consistent enough. There's no scorer really outside of Jacoby Gillespie.
Yeah.
Even though Nate Amon is projected to be a lottery pick, he just hasn't really shown up for me this year.
Right.
And then finally, Ole Miss at Kentucky. I threw this one in here because it's one of those games that could be a little bit tricky.
Yeah, it is true. And the thing is that I thought about Texas. I didn't ultimately take them, but I took the home team Florida. I took the road team Vandy. I took the home team Alabama. I kind of want to take the road team just to have a nice balance here, half and half. I liked what I saw from Ole Miss, and I think that there are bright spots for this team. I think A.J. Storr could be a star. I just didn't see enough to go to Rupp Arena and get a win there in Kentucky. I like Coach Mark Pope and company. I like Kentucky. Against my better judgment, if I come back and if I don't have a winning week, it's going to be because of that game, I think.
Well, I tried to say what I wanted to say on the show a few weeks ago, but I would like to keep doing this show, so I won't say that. Give me Ole Miss.
Okay.
Give me A.J. Storr. Give me 30-plus points for the guard. He steps up in a big way for Chris Beard and company. They start to play a complete game. They go on the road to Rupp Arena because Kentucky is a little bit up and down. Final thing before we go. If you were to pick one underdog this week, who would it be and why?
To win outright?
To win outright.
One dog to win outright would be Texas. To win that game at home against Georgia.
Would Ole Miss? I mean, I'll go outside of Ole Miss. I could honestly. I think the next closest one would probably be Auburn at Florida. Because if Tahad has a good game, then I think there's a legitimate chance for, or maybe we didn't even talk about Philip Jovich.
I know, and I know he didn't have a 23-point game in that second time around against Ole Miss, but no, he can be a monster weapon. In fact, now that I say that, I'll actually like the Auburn pick a little bit more, just because I see a path. I see a clearer path for an upset win for Auburn than I do for Texas. It's just, I saw what I saw at the Moody Center last week, and I know the crowd can't score a single point, but you talked about the spookiness of it, and it's haunted, and they created some magic last week. That magic, by the way, beating Vanderbilt, they haven't won since then. Vanderbilt has not won since. I think they get it done this week. But
don't have a haunted weekend.
I know. That is it for our picks. We will break it all down coming up next week. Thank you so much for joining us here on Southeast Sports Plus. We'll see you next time.